What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Junkies Podcast. Today's guest is my buddy Jared Massic, a welding instructor based out of Maple Mountain High School in Utah. Jared's been teaching welding and changing lives for the past 15 years, and he's truly a passionate educator. His students just cleaned house at Skills National in Atlanta, Georgia back in June. We'll get right into his story after a quick word from our supporters. Today's episode of the Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Fronius USA. Fronius is thrilled to announce 2 new welding products to unleash your welding potential. First up is the Fronius Dual Wire Feeder. The new WF25i gives welders the freedom to have 2 torches ready to go, each with different wire types or sizes, different welding parameters, and easily switchable at the touch of a button. No need to change wire spools or consumables between applications. Get precise wire feeding and save time without adding complexity to your day. Next is the mobile fume extraction system, Exento. The Exento comes in both high-vac and low-vac versions to fit your specific welding needs. The low-vac system includes a flexible extraction arm with 360-degree rotation and a flow-optimized hood for exceptional fume capture rate. The high-vac system combines perfectly with the Exento torch kits to remove more than 99.9% of captured fume particulates at the arc to provide excellent extraction in a compact unit. Come experience both product lines at FabTech this September in Chicago. While at the booth, be sure to stick around for daily welding machine giveaways, guest appearances, welding presentations, and of course the opportunity to weld on-site with a wide range of Fronius products. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. Rockmount makes the rods and wires you've always needed but never knew existed, like Neptune MIG for welding aluminum sheets, extrusions, pipe, and casting. Neptune MIG delivers top-quality welds with great bead appearance and boasts 40,000 pounds of tensile strength. And unlike other types of filler metal for aluminum, it can be anodized post-welding. Neptune MIG is suitable for a wide range of aluminum alloys and is designed to produce superior results with minimal skills. This product is particularly excellent for ship superstructures, cargo tanks, truck frames, bodies, lights, furniture, and any other aluminum you encounter in the shop or out in the field. Check out Neptune MIG today, along with many other amazing rods and wires Rockmount has to help you weld stronger so your repairs can last longer. And right now, you can get a free 1-pound tube of Tartan AAA when you spend $250 or more at rockmountwelding.com and use code word AJP in the discount box at checkout. Get the job done right the first time, every time with Rockmount. We're also brought to you by Outlaw Leather, your one-stop shop for all things welding. Outlaw carries a wide range of everything you need as a welder. Hit up their website, outlawleather.com, and get tooled up with fast, easy shipping right to your door. Outlaw carries all the names you know and trust like CK Worldwide, Bomber, Flametech, Sawyer, and more. Outlaw can also build any custom leather work you want to include hoods, arm pads, bolt bags, scabbards, and more. Outlaw carries a full line of exotic leathers as well to include Cayman, Stingray, and Elephant. Just reach out to info@outlawleatherllc.com and send them a description or a sketch of what you're looking for. They can put any logo or design on your leather welding gear. And right now, listeners of the Junkies Podcast can save 15% off on all in-stock leather goods when you use Junkies in the discount box at checkout. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
Thank you for downloading show number 286 of the Junkies Podcast.
You're listening to the Junkies Podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
Jared, what's up, man?
Not much, Jason. How you doing?
Doing good, man. How you been? It's been what? It's probably like damn near a year to the day that we hung out in Ryan's class over there at the school.
You are 100% right. Actually, that's crazy. I didn't even think about it. But yeah, it was end of July last year. I went out to Orlando for that educator workshop that Ryan put on.
What'd you think of that?
Dude, I remember calling my wife that first night, almost emotional. And I said, I think I found my people.
Yeah, I found my tribe.
You know, because I really am passionate about education. I would say I'm probably more of a teacher first, then welder, or mentor first, and then welder. I've just be able to find my passion that way. And to find a bunch of other educators in welding and be able to connect with them and move them along and just brainstorm and just feed off of their energy was amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool to see people's first reaction. Like I had the pleasure of meeting Ryan back when I went up to the Lincoln Educator Workshop back in like, I think it was 2015 was the first time I met him. And I was like, this guy's odd. Like you can't be, nobody can be this excited about teaching welding, but it's contagious.
Yeah, you can't fake his enthusiasm.
No.
That is him. And I've been kicking myself because I met him for the first time as well last year. But I'm originally from Ohio, and I was planning on trying to do one of those educator workshops and, stay with friends and family and just, be there. And I just never did. And then obviously he left Lincoln, but finally we got to meet. I'm like, it was almost fate. Eventually we were going to meet, but it could have been a lot earlier. But it was good that we finally did meet.
I love that dude, man. I guess he just got back from Africa shortly or a little bit ago. He went over to Africa to teach a bunch of kids how to weld. Yeah. And I was like, that's so freaking Ryan, man.
I can't remember if it's Tanzania or something like that.
I think that was it.
I'm the section chair out here in Utah, and somebody in AWS or from Tanzania, that company contacted me saying some of these Africans are going to be here to try and show them the ropes or mentor them. I said, you bet, just send them my way. I haven't reached out since then, but it's kind of interesting how that circle is made.
Yeah. And it's really cool to see a room full of educators, people that are passionate about what we do. I mean, like you said yourself, you're an educator first and a welder second. But I mean, that could probably flip back and forth at times. But I think once you get that teaching bug, or once you find, like I had no idea when I got into education, I was like, I told my professor, I was like, I'll try it for a term. I'll leave my current full-time job, because I was an iron worker at the time, working at, for the union. I was like, I'll put my book on the shelf for, a term, 16 weeks, and, I'll see what it's like. And if I don't like it, I'm right back on my tools. And dude, by like the end of the second week, I'm like, holy shit, this is freaking awesome. Just sharing your passion. Like I don't even think I was that passionate about welding when I started education. But once I saw what you could do with it, once you see what you can do with somebody else's life, they get interested, they get passionate about it. They start, getting better jobs, taking that next step in their journey in life. And it's because you were a part of that. You showed them, you gave them the guidance, the wisdom, the knowledge, the know-how to go out and provide for themselves and teach them a craft that, we're really passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I teach high school. That's my primary gig. I've been teaching high school since 2009. And for a period of time, I taught at a tech college in evening. For about 7 years, I taught evening classes, and I was a daytime instructor. So it was really interesting to be able to be a part of young child, like adolescent, teenage life, and then also adult life, and teaching them this aspect of honing a craft. And really rewarding to watch the younger generation grab some sort of direction, but also then help an older generation really perfect something. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
And it's a different dynamic teaching, like you said, you taught like at the college level, also the high school level, teaching a group of like college or adult students is completely different than teaching a group of like high school students. Like right now, we just opened up 100%. Our class Monday. The class started Monday, and I've got this one young man in my class, and he's really quiet.
I saw a post about that. Yeah.
He's just really quiet, really reserved. But I can see, like, if I go over and do like a demo, or like if they're working, I go over to the table and I'm like, everybody's cool, everybody's content. They know what they're doing. They don't need any help right now. I'm just going to go over here and rip out a weld. Keeping my skills up.
Yep.
And as soon as I do that, man, he's like right over the table looking. What are you doing? Like I can see his eyes lighting up.
Yeah.
And he really, like I said, he doesn't really talk. He's not really reserved. Or I mean, he's pretty reserved. But then I talked to his dad. He's like, I don't know what you did to my kid, but he will not shut up about welding. And I was like, it has that effect. But it is funny because in the class, he's like really, really quiet, doesn't really say much, doesn't really ask for help.
Observing, yeah.
And then he goes home and just like will not stop talking about it. Like he brought his mom in today to like show the welds and stuff that he'd been done, and they're like, This is really cool what you're doing. Like I wish he had this interest in like math and science and history. And I was like, well, he's obviously a kinesthetic learner. He's got to get his hands on. I was the same way when I was growing up. Like, let me touch it, feel it, and take it apart and put it back together. I can learn that way. Don't give me a textbook and a worksheet. Like, I'm not going to remember any of that stuff. Make it relevant.
Yeah, teaching this hands-on, there's something even with, because I've had kids from valedictorian, senior class president, all the way to bottom of the food chain as far as academically goes. But when you get them in the shop, no matter who they are, it unlocks another part of their brain. And these kids that are so academically driven, they're like, I don't get it. And then you explain, let's say, the triangle, Pythagorean's theorem, and they finally get to see it applied. And it's like, oh no, I get that. That's amazing. And then you see these other kids, the other kids like, I'm terrible at math. And then you show them the same thing. You look at, this is how we do it. All right, now let's formulate it. And then they see it. Oh, wait, I can do math because I see how it works. Right. And I was the same way. I was terrible with fractions for the longest time. And then when I was starting to get in the trade and I was using my tape measure nonstop, all of a sudden it clicked. I just started visualizing my tape measure as I was adding, dividing, multiplying fractions. And I'm like, oh, okay. But it wasn't until I was able to make that connection. Just giving me a piece of paper and trying to do long division or whatever with fractions, it was like not going to happen.
Yeah.
But now that I've been able to kind of connect that, and I help those students connect that the same way, it's pretty cool. It's amazing.
Yeah. We used to do like project-based learning at the school. Mm-hmm. And I would always, you always have the students the same thing, they're like, oh yeah, I'm not good at math. And it's like, okay, cool. No problem, man. Me neither. And we start going through, doing the layout, figuring out what the miters are going to be and all this, that, and the other thing. And they come up with the answers, and I'll tell them like, congratulations. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? And I was like, you just did trig. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't tell you what it was called. And you did.
Yeah. I, right after COVID, was coming up with an assignment that I've been thinking about doing. It was basically calculating loads on a boom, making like a boom arm or some sort of, for a whatever. You can build a boom for a wire feeder or just a jib crane in your shop. And I wanted to try and do a small scale assignment. And I got some engineering student to give me the formulas all dumbed down. And we calculated this load and how far out the boom was and how much sand was in the bucket. And these kids were like doing this crazy, like statics is what the math is called. And every engineer I've talked to hated their statics class.
Yep.
But I was able to kind of put this in a way where the kids can understand calculating these loads just a little bit. I mean, they're definitely not going out and calculating loads for a building, but it was a lot of fun to see that they could do it. And like understand. And I said, I had a helmet that was donated to me, and I gave the kid who got the closest calculation right, I gave him a helmet, and it was, he was pretty stoked.
Yeah. I had to do statics for my bachelor's degree. And I remember I was scraping by, there was four modules or whatever, and like the first two, like I was barely scraping by, and I was like, if it gets any worse than this, I'm gonna have to retake this class. And it's one of the last classes that is standing between me and walking across the stage. And like module 3 was like way out in left field, and I was like, I do not get this. And we took an exam for module 3, and like by the time I got back to my truck, I knew I bombed this exam. And like, I just put my phone on silent. I turned the radio off, and I had like an hour and a half drive home from school. And this is like 10 o'clock at night. And I just drove home in complete silence. Like, I was so mad at myself. And I was like, dude, I just can't get this. And I told my wife when I got home, I was like, hey, sorry, I didn't call you. Cause I normally call her or text her when I'm leaving. I was just so stressed out and mad. I might not be able to get this degree. I'm going to have to take this one class again for the next 16 weeks after I fail it, cause I can't drop out. I gotta finish it out. And the fourth module was like centroid, and I walked in there and like we sat down, and she's like, "Okay, we're gonna calculate the center load of mass or whatever to," and I was like, oh, "Okay, cool." So like she explains the formula, this, that, and the other thing, and I'm looking at I'm just looking at the PowerPoint she's got up there because she's got the examples up there, and everybody else is kind of like feverishly writing stuff down, and I was like, X3 and Y 1.5, and she's like, how did you do that? And I was like, what? She goes, that's the right answer. I was like, well, it's you're just picking up the center of a load. Like I do this at work every day with a crane and, a set of shackles and some slings and stuff. She's like, do it again. So she goes to the next problem. And I was like, okay, it's X is 4 and Y is 7.5. And she's like, holy crap, dude, I aced that last exam and passed the class.
Nice.
I was like, okay,
Yes.
I just had to figure out a way to make it relevant. I was like, okay,
Mhm.
this makes sense because I'm just figuring out you got an odd shaped part up there. I got to figure out how to pick it up, center. And it was
Nice.
I was like, okay, cool, I can do this. But yeah, just breaking things down, making it relevant to the students. As long as you don't tell them it's math or they're learning history or science or chemistry or anything like that.
Oh yeah, I love I do lecture days like once every 2 weeks, and we just take 30 minutes in class and we talk. And I love bringing up the periodic table. I'm like, who can tell me what the periodic symbol for tungsten is? And everyone's like, TI. No, that's titanium. And they go through. And I'm like, how about a W? And they're like, what? Yeah, Wolfram. And they're like, what? And anyway, it's a lot of fun. And we talk about atomic weight a little bit, talking about helium versus argon and the other noble gases and whatnot. But it's fun to relate this smarter stuff that they think they're not smart enough for, and just say, no, you use this smart stuff all the time. You guys are brilliant.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone tell you you're not. You can do hard things. I love telling the kids they can do hard things. And then when they do it, I'm like, look, you did a hard thing. And it's a lot of fun to see the younger kids just light up and just like, give them the confidence to go on and tackle the world, because it is getting rough out there.
Yeah.
Even adults,
little wins.
Yeah. Adults suffer too with a number of different things, but these kids sometimes start behind the 8 ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like how Ryan does it, like explaining metallurgy with taffy and chemical composition with salt and pepper. And it's now this makes sense.
See, these are the things I remembered in class in that seminar, but he needs to record those and just put them up there, because like I got my notes from that, and I'm like, oh man, I need to get taffy. Oh, I need to do the milkshakes, right? Yep. I need to do the chocolate milk. And they're just the ways that you can approach these kids and teach them, like we're saying, chemistry or whatever, some sort of bond, and they just don't realize it, and they just need a little connection. And then they're smart enough to retain it, and then they use it, and it's great.
Yeah. So how'd you get into welding education?
So I took 4 years of like metal shop back in high school. I graduated back in 2001. I think we're fairly close in age. Yeah. And I took 4 years of metal shop. Just loved working with my hands. I was actually traumatized in middle school wood shop. Like my teacher made me sand by hand, like everything. And I couldn't see the scratch marks. And I was just so frustrated. I'm like, screw this. When I get to high school, I'm going to use a grinder. I had no idea that power sanders existed or anything like that. I'm just like, screw wood shop. I'm going to use a power tool that I know exists. And so I took 4 years of metal shop in high school. Then when I went to college, I was working telemarketing, some stupid dead end job, trying to help people with their cell phone bills. It was dumb. I hated it. But a kid I worked with, his girlfriend's dad owned a fab shop. And so I was like, hey, I know how to weld. I loosely knew how to weld from these experience, because it was more like just build stuff in high school. It wasn't a lot of highly calculated stuff. So I got this job just welding swing shift. And as I was sitting there, I was in college, and I was like, I want to teach. I thought maybe history education. And as I was welding one night, I'm like, I wonder if they still had industrial arts. I wonder if that's still a thing. And I just kind of went on a path of finding a college that taught basically technology and engineering education, so I could go and teach shop class. And then the state of Utah, I'd moved to Utah from Ohio. And the state of Utah requires so many years of work experience to get an endorsement with your license to teach. So while I was going through college in my tech program, I worked in a number of different like fabrication shops. I worked on newsroom set. I worked basically a prop shop.
Okay.
So we built kind of like you and Disney, but like way, or can I say that? Am I allowed to say Disney?
You can say that. You can say the D word.
But it was like random trade show sets. So when you go to Fab Tech and you see these people in their fancy booths, like a company I used to work for would build those. Or if you newsrooms, if you watch TV and you're watching the news, all their sets are built by the company I worked for during college. So I worked on a couple movies, a couple newsroom sets, a couple trade show sets while I did that and got my degree to teach. And then my hours there transferred to get my endorsement to teach welding. And then I graduated in 2009 from college and went through a bunch of different random interviews, almost took a junior high job. It was not great. But then the school, Maple Mountain, that I'm at right now was about to open up. And I was able to interview and I got the job. So I've been here ever since 2009. Just wanted to work with my hands, I guess, and just had a passion for metalworking from that high school kind of connection. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you guys do like a lot of project-based learning and stuff. I remember you were talking about like the kids build like these like go-karts or trikes or something like this, and then they compete in a race every year. Yeah.
So, what we started this as a district. There's 5 high schools in our school district. In some states, each school is their own independent school district. In Utah, they kind of have a conglomerate. So we have 5 cities that are nearby each other that are one school district. And each school district or each school in our district has a full-time welding program, 7+ class periods of welding, 210+ kids a year rolling through our programs.
That's awesome.
And my second year teaching, the teacher just down the road from me, his name's Sean Black. He teaches at Payson High right now. And he motivated these kids with like different competition projects based in third term. And I remember we did catapults one year. We started off just like, here's a random list of scrap metal and you got to throw a tennis ball. And we get together as a school district and whoever made a catapult that met the requirements and threw the tennis ball the furthest was the winner. And then the second year we did tandem bikes. We just get these kids hacked bikes together and made these tandem bikes. We raced them around the track at the school. And we had a bunch of, they were racing each other for the prize of being the district's best tandem bike or whatever. And that was right around when drift trikes just started getting super popular. And these were like the pedal powered ones. And so we did a trike fest a couple years in a row where it was all pedal powered. And then it was like the next year we just upped it to motorized stuff. And so we did motorized drift trikes and these kids are going 5 or 6 at a time through a little track we put together on the driver's ed range. And it kind of just kept taking off. And it got to a point where it's a bit almost too big for me I'm involved with Skills USA quite a bit. So I let these other teachers kind of manage it. I'll still encourage my students to go, but there's an Instagram page out there called Utah Valley CTE Expo or UVCTE Weld Expo. Go check it out. Like they post all the kids' pictures and videos of them and their events. But yeah, now they got not just drift trikes, but they've got tractor pull, drag races, fabrication entries. And they have different classifications, like your stock Predator 212 motor, all the way up to something that's got like a turbo or NOS thrown on it. And I'm like, I'm not a racer, so all this stuff is Greek to me. And but we fumble through it a little bit. But yeah, building these motorized stuff, showing the kids how to fabricate after they learn how to weld is a lot of fun. I typically save a lot of that fabrication stuff now for my juniors and seniors, my second level class and my third level class. A couple of years ago, I just saw a lot of my sophomores building and they spent a lot of money on these projects and they would turn out just a little bit more like a tetanus shot on wheels. And I felt like I was doing them a disservice with all the money they spent on these projects and they weren't turning out great. So I kind of pushed it back. So my sophomore class builds a bunch of smaller stuff to get a hand on fabrication with each process. And then my juniors and seniors then have their freedom to choose whatever they want to build. And I encourage like a mini bike or a drift trike, or if they don't have anything else, we got other signs and stuff like that we can do. But yeah, we encourage them to do stuff that way. It's all project based, right? They have to build a blueprint, put dimensions on it, put welding symbols on it, get me a cut list, a bill of materials, all that sort of stuff. And then once they finally get all the checklist of stuff ready to go, then all right, here's your material, here's a saw, have at it. And then they just start hacking away at stuff. And, obviously I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off and trying to guide them through it, but it's a lot of fun.
How hard is it to like not jump in and kind of like take over and be like, oh, no, hold on, just step aside, let me do this.
Dude,
you
it is
want
so
to win
hard.
or not?
Yeah, well, and that's and these other, and that's just me. I let the sophomores learn a little bit and then excel in their junior and senior year. These other teachers that are fantastic nearby me, they have 9th graders, 10th graders building stuff that is insane. And I don't know what they do, but for me, it's hard not to step in. I have to kind of, if I step in on one, I get too involved in it. And then I've got 30 other kids watching me waiting. And so I have to step back and just give them guidance and then keep moving around the shop because I have so many kids, trying to get my attention. I can't anymore. I used to try and get in there a little bit, but then I realized real fast that I've got 20 kids behind me waiting to get something passed off or whatnot. So
now, do most of your students, do they start like 9th grade or is it like 10th grade before they can come in?
So our school district is 10 through 12, but we have a neighboring school district just to the north of us, and they're 9 through 12. So it kind of depends on the school district in Utah where you're at, but most of us are 10 through 12 grades with a few 9 through 12. So I don't see freshmen at my school. I just see sophomore, junior, and senior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, most of when they come in their sophomore year, do they take the whole program, or do you just find some don't come back after their junior year?
Yes, sir. Right there. So I have 4 level 1 classes. So that's my entry level classes, and I can have juniors, seniors, sophomores all kind of take that class. And so obviously the seniors aren't taking it again. But the sophomores and the juniors, they can kind of move along at least to Welding 2. But I have 4 periods, and it depends on year to year, but last year they put like 36, 38 in a class. And I had a world of a time trying to figure out how to deal with that many sophomores and or whatever in one class. And so we're going to try keeping it at like 28, which is everyone. I've talked to a lot of people and they're like,
still a lot.
I have like 18 or I have 14. I'm like, I wish. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Some of the teachers nearby have almost 40 in a class, in a welding class. And I just, I started doing the math, and when I had that 35, 38, and I was like, it takes me 2 weeks to get around and give another kid 5 minutes of one-on-one.
Yeah.
And I said, that's just, the more kids you shove in a class, the quality of my instruction has to go down.
Plummets.
No matter how enthusiastic or how many great ideas I have, if I have that many to try and manage and put out literal and figurative fires, I'm just not going to get around to everybody for 2 or 3 weeks. And so I talked to my admin, and they're really supportive. And so we're going to try and keep it down a little bit. But again, it comes down to public education, which is why you know what you're doing. It is about butts and seats. That's how they generate my paycheck. Is the state gives the school district money based on how many pupils or kids are in my class. And so if I don't have anybody in my class, then I don't get a paycheck, kind of thing. And so, and welding is a very expensive program to run.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah. And our district is super supportive, and they give us a very generous budget. And I've talked to other teachers, and I don't even know how they survive with the money they get. And so we're blessed to have these people who see the writing on the wall. And now, there was a few years ago, this is back in my 3rd, 4th year, when we were doing that beginning of the Trike Fest thing with all that stuff. There was rumblings of like, oh, maybe it's too expensive to run welding. And so we the reason why that took off, we were really motivated as a group of teachers to say, well, if they're going to have to cut our program, we're going to make it the best programs we can. So it's really hard to cut our programs. And that's, I think, what it turned out to be. We have 5 full-time programs, and it's no longer really a rumbling of, hey, they're too expensive. They're like, what can we do to support you because you're doing such good things over there? And it's challenging to run a class and to run a program and keep the funds. But anywho, now I forget what we're talking about because
just like the number of students in class and everything. But
yeah.
You're right. I mean, I've talked to several instructors that, they get a group of 20 students for a year and they're like, here's your $1,000 budget to go get material and, contact tips and consumables and PPE and all that stuff. It's like, how the hell do you do that? You have to rely on donations from local industry. And a lot of times local industry doesn't care. They got a business to run.
Yeah. And then it is important to get an advisory board going together and to get support from those. I've got some previous students who run their own company now, and I've got parents of former students who run their own company in different ways. And so I do reach out as much as possible to get the extra stuff we need. But it is about butts and seats to get your money. And so we run a A-B schedule. So A day, B day, and we have 4 class periods a day. I teach 7. So I sold out one of my class periods that I normally have a prep each day. Most teachers do. So I teach 3 one day, 4 another day. And so I have about 210 kids that roll through here every other day.
Wow.
And that generates the funds, right? So because of that, I do have a lot of butts and seats. And so I generate the funds. Now, the trade-off is if I only taught, let's say 5 class periods, but they were double blocked or something like that, or 3 class periods double blocked, I would have half as many kids. I'd have them twice as long, get more one-on-one instruction, but then I'd also have less funding. And then I'd have to go into alternate means to get the same amount of money to buy material and whatnot there. And we're fortunate. There's a bar mill basically in Idaho, southern Idaho, northern Utah called Nucor. And there's several Nucor plants all over the United States.
They're huge.
If you got a local Nucor plant, call them up and you're an educator. At least ours, they will trade pound for pound our material for their second or blemished stuff. So I've taken up 20,000 pounds of scrap and they'll give me 20,000 pounds of flat bar to weld on. And it just doesn't meet criteria for selling. They were going to cut it up and remelt it and roll it out. But we kind of do that for them by taking the large stock down to our schools, chopping up and welding coupons and throw it in our scrap bins and take it back up. And as far as I know, that's like a company policy. And so if you're within, I drive, it's 2 hours to get up to northern Utah, southern Idaho. But 2,000 pounds, now it's more than $1 a pound, but back in the day, it was $1 a pound. And so I was saving $20,000 in steel every year just by making a 4-hour drive, or it took half a day or more because of driving all the way up there and back. But
yeah.
You got to be resourceful like that. There's a lot of companies willing to give you their drops from a plasma table or a laser cut. And you can get pretty creative welding stuff like that together. We got a Liberty Safe, makes big gun safes for personal use and safe rooms and stuff like that. They're just down the road from us, and we're set bins up in their shop, and they'll give us all their drop pieces from stamping out the shape of the safe. And we just take it and weld on it and throw it away, and they'll give us more because they're filling these bins, 3 times a week.
Yeah. That's what I used to do. We do like plant tours with the students. I'd say, we'd set up shop tours and everything. And, especially with like new companies, you go out there, you tour the facility and they're like, yeah, if we can ever do anything to help. And I look over there to scrap metal bin and be like, what do you guys do with all that scrap metal? Oh yeah, we just throw it out, in recycling, whatever. We got a company that comes and picks it up. And like, if you guys ever have like extra drops or anything, like, dude, they palletized it up. And most of them will deliver it right to us.
Yeah.
You got to ask.
Yeah, that's the thing. I always tell my students, the answer is always no unless you ask, right? There's a lot of initiative out there to be learned. And I'm like, sometimes the answer is no, but you won't know unless you ask. Yeah. And so making those contacts, being nice, always writing thank you letters back to them and whatnot. One of the things from Skills USA, I've got a bunch of flyers for thank you letters to our sponsors that we've got to sign today with my students. And we're going to just hang them up in their storefront, give them to all the people who supported us to let them know, hey, you're supporting education. We want to support you. Community, go support them. And so it's a nice little homage for those that support us kind of thing.
Yeah, we set up a lot of great relationships that way. So not only would the employer allow us to come in and do a plant tour, they'd give us scrap metal, but then a lot of times they'd end up hiring our students.
Yep. And that same Liberty.
A win-win all over the place,
Yeah, that Liberty Safe is... they've actually switched the shift to accommodate high school students that are 18, that are seniors ready to graduate. But So they'll take them right after school at like 3:00, 3:30, and let them work until about, I think it was like 8. So give them like a 4-hour shift or something like that. So they can still go home and do schoolwork, but then get them in the door, get them trained, get them a paycheck. And they were still going to start them, $18 an hour. And so obviously they don't have positions for every kid in the district, but they're willing to do that to get these kids in the door at an earlier age than right after they graduate.
Yeah,
right?
and then once they graduate, they walk into a full-time position.
Exactly. And I've got a handful of other companies that I try and get kids to working after school hours and whatnot, and then we get good relationships. Even like right now, I've got a student practicing for the U.S. trials, and just reaching out to former people, getting donations here, getting a fume extractor so we have good ventilation, getting the wire we need from another company, getting the metal we need from another company so he can just sit down and weld.
That's awesome. Yeah. Tell me about skills, because I know that you just went up there and I think you did pretty good, right? Or your team.
Yeah, we were pretty excited. We went to Atlanta this last summer, about a month ago. Oh, I guess maybe it was only 3 weeks. I don't know, whatever. Not too long ago. Yeah. And the fabrication contest, we took gold in, and our individual welder also took gold for Utah in the national conference. And I've never had a individual welder win state. Like, our state is super competitive in welding.
Yeah, it is.
All these
couple come out of Utah.
Yeah, I mean, Chandler came out of Utah. Jordan Packard came out of Utah. And the crazy thing is, I knew both those kids back when they were sophomores and juniors, just running around the state, and they're just stand-up kids back in high school, and they're just awesome adults right now. Do anything for you kind of thing. But super competitive. And so when we go to the state conference for Skills USA, it's like, man, it is a tough battle to get into the top 5, top 3. And I've never been able to get a individual win until this year. And so I was really excited for, his name's Ben Cornaby, and he's just a fantastic stand-up guy. Just a privilege to have him as one of my students. And then my welding fab team, I've been somewhat successful in the past. I call it luck more than anything, or a prayer, but we've won several state titles with our fab team and gone back and done fairly well at nationals for, I guess, part of a decade now. But
now, what prevents them from, entering World Skills with the fabrication? Because I went up to World Skills in Cleveland, I was like, where's the American team? Like, I want to go talk to them because we speak the same language, literally. I could speak to the other folks from, other countries, but they, if their interpreter wasn't around, like, you weren't getting anything. Yeah. They just kind of like nod their head and look at you. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. But like, they're like, oh yeah, we don't have, America's never competed. I was like, what? Why not?
Yeah. So from my little understanding on World Skills and the fabrication contest they do, it's a singleton. It's an individual that cuts and bends and welds stuff together. And I've seen their projects done, and they are amazing.
Fantastic.
But so the U.S. at nationals, we do a 3-man team in fabrication. So there's not an exact correlation from the national contest from fabrication to the world's level contest in fabrication. So that's basically what stands in their way. Also, the way that you've seen the quality there. It's just not the same level. None of the college or high school kids in the fab contest are producing at that fabrication level at Worlds. And maybe, obviously, with practice, they could. Mm-hmm. And just the honing everything, making it a good alignment. Because I think that's why the welding contest is doing so well, is there's a good alignment of what you're going to weld in the local level at your school, to a district level, a region level, a state level, a national level. They're all like using these widgets that more or less are what the national or world's level uses. So there's a good straight alignment. We're preparing these students all the way. Where fabrication right now is it's way different.
I got you. I
wish they
did.
That,
like, that 3-person team, if they won nationals, be like, okay, now we have 3 people to compete on the world stage. Mm-hmm. And, just start shoring them up and getting them ready. But I mean, like you said, the level of fabrication that they do at World Skills is just amazing. I mean, the weld quality isn't as good as what the weld teams or the weld individuals are putting out. But I mean, the weld quality is still good. But the fabrication, the layout, I mean, they're over there with like
They're
scribes and
calipers.
micrometers.
Yeah.
There's not a tape measure in that building.
And that's where I think there's a big disconnect, because we're still using tape measure, and they're measuring within a 16th, right? But at that world level in the fabrication contest, I mean, they're going down 3 decimal places, from my understanding. So I've yet to witness anything like that in person. I'm, hopeful someday, maybe if it gets back in the US, I'll go out there and watch it. But it's crazy. I enjoy a CTSO, or a career and technical student organization, creating a good Skills USA chapter, or just a club in general at your school. I think just helps with their mental health, right? I had like 50 members in my club this last year at the school, and we've got about 1,700 kids at the school. So it's not a huge club. But as far as clubs go, I mean, I guess I took about half of them to state and compete in different random stuff, but they come to the club to be a part of it, to be the camaraderie, the friendship. Hardly any of them are like, oh, I need to be the best at cabinet making. I need to be the best at video. No, they just want to come and hang out and have fun. And then I'm like, all right, well, you're here. Do you want to compete? You're a member of Skills USA. It entitles you to try to do something. And then we just try and hone their skills and whatever they pick to compete in to do their best. And so it's a lot of fun seeing these kids and giving that direction. Now,
with that many kids in your welding program, how do you get them skilled up to within fabrication? Because like you said, you got like 28 kids. How do you get them skilled up enough to go and compete on a national level?
Well, so I'm more or less, my sophomore kids, they watch for a little bit from a distance. So Ben, the kid who won nationals this last year, as a sophomore, he'd never welded before. Really, he'd been around welding his life, but never welded. And I just knew who he was from his family. His family's owns a fab powder coat shop in the community. And I just said, hey, Ben, you're going to be my individual welder someday? And he just smiled and said, sure. And you don't pick him out, but you just encourage him. I had another sophomore this last year doing really good, and he was just sailing through my stuff. And so finally he finished all my assignments, and I said, all right, I want you to try an overhead flux core T-joint. I want you to try a vertical flux core T-joint. And he's a sophomore. But he was up for the challenge, and he did not too bad for a sophomore running those positions for the first time. But so when they get the junior and senior year in my program, I tend to do an in-class contest right around Thanksgiving, Halloween, and I say, hey, look, we're gonna do a weld test, and I need you guys it's gonna be timed. You're gonna have rotations, and we build a little small widget with 3 welds for each process in class, so they have an hour to do all of that, 15-minute rotations, right? And there's kids that can sling welds in their sleep, but when they get them razzled with that time frame and you rush them, everything looks like pigeon turds. It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to see them just struggle. And maybe that's why I like doing it, just to see the angst and the frustration, because they need to know that there are hard things out there that they haven't yet done, but that someday they could do, right? Yeah. And so as we're competing and doing that in class, I just also let kids know, if you want to do a welding team, you need to find some friends. I don't assemble my team. I don't cherry pick them. The last 10 years I've been doing fab contest, I let the kids assemble themselves, and I just take the talent that's there and work off the camaraderie that they already have. Usually they're best friends or friends of some sort, so they can take the crap that they throw at each other. I'm like, you're going to have to be thick-skinned, because if you're doing something wrong, we're going to call you out on it, and you got to be willing to fix it too. Yeah. So
you got to take ownership.
Yep. And so they go, and we'll get, sometimes I'm begging kids to put a team together, which is crazy for how, successful we've been. That's why I say it's mostly on a prayer that we've done so well, but I'll beg a team or beg somebody to put together a team. And some years I have like 3 or 4 teams trying to compete against each other. And we just do some after school time outside of class, and we give them little projects, used to reading blueprints, welding symbols, and in a timed manner, right? So simulating the contest as much as possible. And then once they whittle themselves down, I usually get a judge from outside and on their final project, close to like January when we're about getting ready to go to state, I let them do a build off, and I have the judge basically select the team that's going to go. And then that's how my one team gets ready for state. And then getting ready for state or winning state, if we're lucky, we just try and get ready for nationals by doing the same thing. I did a minor in manufacturing engineering in college. And so I really liked the whole lean manufacturing and Six Sigma you've talked about a couple of times. Just efficiency. And you have to be super efficient in any contest, especially at the national level. So we talk a lot about ways to reduce your wasted movements, wasted time, to be as fast and efficient as possible. And so that's kind of how we go through it, getting ready for nationals. Even my Ben, when he was doing individual, I said, you need to know how long each weld takes you, because if you're going to have to tack and weld this whole widget out in 1 hour, that's tough. So tacking, he'd measure time, how long it took him to tack a widget together and how long it took him to weld every single joint out. So he knew if he had to do that, he could in the time frame. And then more or less the same with the fabrication team. You got 6.5 hours in that contest to weld the whole project, but they're going to stop you and measure your project, and you have about an hour of stop time. So you really only have 5.5 hours. So you kind of have to just plan. If you can't finish the project in that time, you need to figure out how you can do that.
Yeah, a lot of troubleshooting, adapting,
overcoming. Yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, the first time we build a project, typically for nationals, it takes us like 12, 13 hours to build that project. And it's really fun to see them start picking up on those efficiencies. And the next thing you know, they're just cruising and building, multiple in the time frame versus just one. And so that's kind of where we shoot them for.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Everlast Welders. The Typhoons are out now, and the 230 amp version is on sale for $27.49. That's $1,000 savings on this all-new TIG welding machine. There's also a 330 amp version as well. The all-new Typhoon features a 7-inch high-def colored screen, split waveform control for AC, industry-first waveforms, and a 3 amp start on AC. You can order yours today at everlastwelders.com, and be sure to use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout to get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. We're also brought to you by Strong Hand Tools, the tools that save you time, improve your quality, and increase your comfort. These are the tools I trust to run my side business for repairs and fabrication. Head on over to stronghandtools.com/promo and save big on tables and fixturing tools during their summer specials, including 5% off mobile workstations, 15% off slotted tool tables, and 5% off 5/8 tool kits. Stop fighting your work and increase your productivity and quality with Strong Hand Tools. Now let's get back to the show. Yeah. I remember we had, when I went up to one of Ryan's classes up in Cleveland, when he was running out of Lakeview? Or,
Lakeland?
Lakeland. Or not Lakeland. It wasn't Lakeland. It's a high school right down the road from Lincoln.
Oh,
but we went up there for it was like the first educator workshop that he put on his own. Yeah. With Kyle. And I was like, okay, cool. But he started talking about project-based learning, and then he pulls out this little widget, and he's like, okay, here's all your parts and pieces. Here's a set of blueprints. It was all done through Project MFG.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, cool. It's a little stainless pressure vessel. I mean, it's tiny. It's probably 6-7 inches tall. It's a rectangle. It's got a little plate on the bottom, 2 kickers, and a pressure valve on the top. And he's like, you got 2 hours. I'm like, oh, this is a piece of
cake.
Yeah. Easy day.
Yeah.
So we go in there.
Teachers talk a mad game.
Yeah. And I'm like, I get it all tacked up and everything. And I'm like, cool, I'm doing great. And they're like, 45 minutes left. And I'm like, oh, shit. Because every weld that you put on there is a different position, and it's stainless, so you can't cook it. And you can't quench it, so you gotta let it cool naturally. And I'm like, oh damn, how am I gonna get this done? I mean, we got it done, but at the beginning, I was like, 2 hours, that's plenty of time. I'm taking my time, getting everything tacked out, and I was, oh no, that 2 hours is not enough time.
Well, and I think these projects, there are a lot of teachers out there that do project-based learning, whether they realize it or not, right? I mean, our district and the Utah Valley CTE Expo that the other teachers are putting on. And that goes across the state, by the way. Everyone from even out of the state. If you live near Utah and you want to come and watch or participate, Sean would love to have you. But Those are prime examples of project-based learning. But even doing weld tests or, position welding in some ways is project-based for the industry. I see a lot of those boiler tube simulators, right? They're in different positions and they've got to get in there and weld around in their mirror box or whatever. I'm like, that's still project-based learning. I think people need to realize that what we want to do is just build something in the end that has a use, whether it's in industry or for fun, right? If it's a go-kart, maybe it's a bookshelf for your office or a table, whatnot, fire pit, barbecue, smoker. Like those are all projects. They don't have to be as ornate. They can be pretty simple too. And so these teachers that I think sometimes there's coupon factories is what I call them. Mm-hmm. All they do is just weld coupons. And I'm like, there's a lot of fun there. I guess it's useful, but you got to challenge these kids to maybe get something and weld on at least different material that they're not used
Think
to.
Outside the box, use some tools other than, your stinger, chip and hammer, and a wire brush.
Yeah.
Use a tape measure, accommodation square.
One of the things I did for a project-based learning, it was a coupon, but I gave the kids some 7018, I think it might have been 332nd, and I gave them 14 gauge. I said, you got to weld this. And we had never touched that thin of metal at all. And so we, 3 hours later, they've burnt through all this stuff. And I finally, we call them over and I said, all right, here's the trick. This is how we would do it. This is thin stuff. We're going to get plenty of penetration on positive. Let's start to negative and we'll see how it works out, and teaching that just a little bit of that struggle of like, oh, you can weld sheet metal. You can weld this, even though this wants to cook it, flip it over this way. And that was a quote unquote project, but they learned something there for sure. I just kicked my mic. That's awesome.
Oh, you're good.
Good luck editing that out.
I'm just going to leave it in there. It wasn't that bad.
So anywho, yeah. So project-based learning is definitely, you don't want to just sit there and do nothing, I guess, or just weld coupon after coupon. You want to give them these little challenges and trials, and then acknowledge, right? The hard thing sometimes is that they give up when it's hard, right? I've had the set of sisters that I taught all three of them, and they were absolutely terrified of welding and terrified. Like trembling, like they wanted to drop the class so hard. And I would email and talk to the parents. I'm like, no, I think they're doing great. And I would just coach them along. You know what? You just did a hard thing. Like they would get so much confidence just by saying, you know what? You actually didn't do as bad as you thought. You're really hard on yourself. And they were in gymnastics. And so they're talking point deduction. Point deduction's like crazy when you just step your foot to the side and they're getting, tenths of a point docked off. So just encouraging these kids that, you know what? Yeah, that was tough and you did it. I just went camping with my kids and I have a 4-year-old and we took him hiking and we didn't really tell him how far, but as we were about to our destination, which was 2.5 miles up, he was like, I'm done hiking. Can we be done? I'm like, hey, bud, we still have to go back and we're not there yet. So we got to these hot pots and we kind of soaked around a little bit. And then we turned around and came back and he took several water breaks on the way back, but he did it. And I was like, you know what? You just did a hard thing. He takes, we did 13,000 steps. I did. And he takes 2 steps to my 1.
He probably did like 26,000.
26,000 steps because I was watching his feet. And every time I took one, he had taken 2. I said, Banks, you just did 26,000 steps. You did something so hard, and I'm so proud of you. Like, I know it seems like we're coddling in some ways. It's not like I didn't carry him. He asked a couple times. I said, no, I'm not going to carry you. And he knew that I meant that I wasn't going to carry him, but he kept going. And I think they just need to realize they can do these hard things. And that's a 4-year-old. That doesn't change when they turn teenagers at all, right? They need the confidence. This world will eat them up. Just as you know, they need that confidence. They can go out there and land the weld test. They need to go out there and land the interview. And if they're so timid because they've always, been told in a roundabout way that they just can't, or they're not smart enough, they won't succeed. Maybe it's a prayer or whatever, but they they'll go out there with at least the confidence, I did this once and it passed, or, a weld test or whatnot. I can go do it again. And so I guess that's where I said at the beginning, I'm more of a mentor / teacher first. And then welding's my media as an artist. Welding's my media, but I'm an artist that way with the kids, because my heartstrings are tugged a lot. And maybe some people might say I have too much compassion, too much patience, because I got kids that run amok once in a while around here. And kids are like, why don't you kick them out? I'm like, you know what? I don't know what they're going through at home. You know what? They're seeking attention somehow. And I know there needs to be a consequence in some way, and they'll figure it out. But right now they just need love for the most part. And so you just try and give them those experiences where they know they can be successful, and they can do these hard things, and they don't need to like drop out. They don't need to go do drugs and be drunk in a gutter somewhere. I'm like, you're brilliant. You can do this. And so I'm a little cheerleader for them. And that's where I loved teaching the college level, because they demanded your expertise. They listened when you were talking, and they did what you said, right? That was way different teaching adults that way. High school kids will give you the finger. They'll run off, they'll run around, they'll do whatever. And then they're like, well, can I have an A? Like, no, you can't have an A. You didn't
earn one.
You didn't earn it. I will give you everything you earn. If you want to make up the time that you missed class because you were sloughing, then yeah, you bet. I'll give you the grade, but you got to come back in for 20 more hours because you slept half the term. And they're like, oh, well, what do I need to do to pass? Oh, this is great. All your educators will love this. I don't give a D letter grade. It goes A, B, C, F. My first few years teaching was a huge learning experience. I had some circus shows going on, but one of the first things I learned is kids will come at the end of the term and just do whatever they can. I just need to pass. What do I need to do to pass? I was so fed up with it. I'm like, I went to my admin and I was like, can I drop the D letter grade? Can I just go to 70% and just say that's where the F starts? And kind of thought about it. He's like, well, just like in the store when things are $6.99 and you think it's cheaper than $7, if you did something like 69 or 68% F, I think we could do that. We'd sell it and they wouldn't care. So for the last 10 years, 12 years, I've had no D, 68%. If you're below that, you're failing my class. And so if they want to pass, they actually have to be here. They have to earn it and work. Even though they may not be great at it, they gotta work for it.
That's the way it should be. I mean, you're going to get out what you put into it. So you can't like screw off the entire term and walk up and be like, hey, man, what do I have to do to pass? You already blew your shot.
Yeah.
Here's how you can redeem yourself. But I'm not just going to give you a passing grade because you need to pass this class in order to be able to graduate. Like, you kind of shit in your own mess kit here.
Yeah. I had my mentor teacher when I student taught at a high school up in Provo called Timpview. His name was Bill, and he's like a tall Viking dude. He's got broader shoulders than you. He's taller by 2 head lengths of me, but a beard like yours. I mean, he's just Viking ran in his blood. And he could command respect of the kids, and they would do anything he said because they were, he was a grizzly bear on his hind legs. And basically when, picking his brain about different stuff, he's like, when the end of term comes, you got to stick to your guns. You got to hold your ground no matter what type of convincing or arguing they're going to do. Just say, nope, this is my policy. I'm going to stick to it. And so it's actually proved to be really good to follow that advice as the kids come up at the end of the term and they're like, I just need this much to pass. And I say, well, how are you going to earn it? I'm not just going to float it to you. You're going to have to come in and do some more welds. You're going to have to come in and put in some more time. You're going to have to come in and do another project. You're going to have to earn this. And it's not necessarily extra credit, but I give them some areas in their grade book where they're allowed to earn back points that they missed the first time around. Mm-hmm. And all my welding assignments, I do a 4-point grading scale. So it's kind of like the AP scale where it's just attempting, emerging, proficient, and then mastery. And so the kids can get as many attempts at each weld as they want, but technically every weld is out of 4 points. and maybe they attempted it and they got a 1 out of 4. But if they get it, they do a little bit better, they might get a 2 out of 4. And finally, when it meets, like, I kind of put my standards on D11, the table. Is it 6.2 now, or is it 7.1? I know they changed it in the last month. 6.2. So that minimum acceptance criteria is what I put basically proficient at, a 3. So, I mean, there can be a little bit undercut in there if I wanted to, or there can be a little bit of porosity in there, but I always push them and I let them decide. I'm like, is this the best you can do? Is this your best? Is this your absolute best? And I'm like, if it's not your best, I want you to try your best. And if it is, then I'll give them the 3. And then after they get the 3, then I start being like real nitty picky, right? No undercut, nice straight bead, even freeze lines, all that sort of stuff. And so then that's when they obtain a 4. And I have a handful of welds on each process per term. And so they've got to, do that. And you're just building them up the entire way, saying, oh yeah. And I think at first, when I first started teaching, it was like, I did a arbitrary out of 100. Oh, that looks like a 50% weld. Yeah. Oh, it looks like an 8. And it's so hard. I mean, I would be here hours into the evening, 5 o'clock. I'd finally leave after grading all these welds I had stacked up in a bucket. And now I kind of have this time card that they keep track of everything, and they bring it up to me right when they're passing off welds, and I update it right then and there. So that 4-point scale has actually served me super well. So maybe some teachers out there could use that, but it makes grading a lot faster, less arbitrary. They kind of know the rubric. And it's not just, oh yeah. And here's
like a 72.
Yeah. And here's the beauty of that. We both know that certain people are more capable off the bat. Because even Ben, when my student Ben first started welding, he was all right, but there were kids in that class of his that were gunslingers, man. They could weld. And I would hold them to a higher standard. That table 6.1 was out the window, and I said, nope, that's not a 3. Not for you. Well, you passed up. I mean, that's his ability. He will get to 6.1, or he'll get to that level 3 eventually. But you're on another whole level grading field. Some kids say, well, that's not fair. I'm like, well, you know what? Sometimes in life, I want to push you to be your best. And I learned this a long time when I was teaching the college too, because some adults got really pissed off at that philosophy for me. Because I had guys that were just trying to, redo a certification or get their hours in or whatever. And they'd bring me a weld, and I'm like, all right, well, so you've been welding for how long? 15, 20 years. I'm like, okay, well, that's all right. And they're like, what do you mean it's all right? I'm like, well, why are you here? Are you here to get better? Or are you here just to punch a clock and get out? Like, if you just want me to sign your stuff off and you don't really want anything out of this, you don't want to hear feedback, you don't want to hear criticism, then so be it. But my goal as an educator would be to help scaffold you into a better individual on your talent wise. And so it took a little bit of convincing for some of these adult people to realize that was also more beneficial for them to see a challenge, improvement, look on that as feedback on how to improve. Like you say, make every weld better than your last. If no one's going to challenge that, how are you ever going to make that last weld better?
Yeah, it's all about progression.
Yeah.
I like the way you did that, because I started doing that. I had the same problem. I started grading, and I was like, yeah, that looks like that's a 75. Okay, this one's an 82. And then I was like, no, I can't, no, because it's just such a pain in the ass, So I developed a rubric, and it was the same thing. Mm-hmm. I got it down to like the simple part where it either is or isn't. It has or it hasn't. Does it have undercut? Yes. Okay, you lose points for this. Does it have porosity? Okay, you lose. It doesn't matter how much. Does it have porosity? Is the crater filled in? Basically going off the guidelines of D11. It either passes or it fails this criteria. And once you strip it down to brass tacks, it makes grading all these projects so much. Like, I literally, there were times it was like, okay, they finished up on a Thursday. I'm putting 5-gallon buckets of coupons in the back of my truck to take home, and I'm laying cardboard out on my dinner table.
Oh my gosh!
And my wife's like, "What the hell are you doing?" I was like, "I'm grading papers."
Yeah,
these papers are like 7 pounds a piece. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm grading papers." I told them I'd have their grades back to them by Monday. I'm not going to school on Friday, and I'm damn sure not doing it this weekend.
No, yeah, I'd steal buckets, basically, steal 5-gallon buckets, and they had the letter like A2, A3, A4, B1, B2, B. So they're all labeled. I'm like, hey, put this in your period bucket. And then you got the kid who can't obviously realized that he's not in B2, he's in B4, but he throws it in that. It was always a hassle trying to get the grading done that way. And again, with the butts and seats, I've been blessed to have several students in my program. And so I'm grading 200 plus widget or, welds a go. And so, yeah, I wasn't leaving. This is early on, like year 3, year 4. I wasn't leaving the school until like 5:36, and school got out at 2:30.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grading stupid coupons out of a bucket. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And so I've developed a little time card thing and 4-point scale. Originally, it was a 2-point scale. Just you attempted it and then you mastered it. But that was a little bit too rough. Kids weren't getting the points that I think were helping them motivate themselves to move along. So then I went to the 4-point scale, and it's been good. I almost am going to change my whole grading to a 4-point scale, which is, it's called standards-based grading.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, on all my standards, did they attempt it? Are they emerging on it? Did they master it? Which is realistically for any hands-on class is really beneficial for the students to just see that grade. Your standard grading scale can't be used with that though, because a 94% A, you'll never get a kid with an A. Everyone's going to get like a C or an F, because that's where like 70% is or whatever. So if you're going to do a standards-based grading on a 4-point scale, you got to slide that A and the B and the C all the way down so that it kind of averages out, because no one's going to get 4s on everything to get 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's a pedagogy rambling right there.
Yeah. Speaking of that, you're going down to the Instructors Institute, aren't you?
I am. Oh my gosh, 14 years in the making.
You're going to learn all about pedagogy from Doc Blannon.
Dude, I am so excited. I can't tell you. I did, when I first started teaching, I did almost every module in Weld Ed. And if you're a new teacher out there and you don't know what that is, go look up Weld Ed. It's a National Science Foundation module for teaching teachers welding, like how to teach welding.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I ate it up. It was awesome. So take out as many. I did a whole bunch of those, and then yeah, I learned about this AWS Instructors Institute back at headquarters in Miami, and I kept asking our section chair, trying to get nominated. So for those of you who don't know how to get there, AWS is broken up into 22 districts. Is it 23?
22 plus Canada and Mexico.
Yeah. So, and each district can send one representative from their district to this institute. Well, each district for Utah, there's 5 states or 5 sections in or maybe 6. I don't know. There's a lot. So we got all these representatives of AWS in each district, and you kind of have to nominate, throw you out why you want to go and this or that. And different people, different sections kept getting nominated ahead of me. And so, yeah, I finally got the nomination, 14 years in. And I'm just so excited to go in and with almost a clean mind, blank slate, and just let it all come in the same way I approached Ryan's class last year. Just let me know what I know and let me learn something. What can I improve on? How do I better my teaching style? Because you can, this is another thing I tell my students all the time. Do you know what the biggest room in the world is, Jason?
The biggest room in the world?
The biggest room in the world. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's the room for improvement.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Put that on a poster.
Yeah, I do. This is the other thing. Do you know what happens when you cross an elephant and a rhino?
Hell if I know.
So those are the 2 things I tell my students almost on a daily basis. Every class period, probably 30 times. The biggest room in the world is room for improvement. And they ask me some random question, and I just say, it's an elephant and rhino situation, man. They're like, what? I had a kid who didn't get that for 3 years. His senior year, he finally was like, oh, it's hell if I know. I get it now. I'm like, I was dumbfounded. I'm like, you're joking me. You're pulling my leg. He's like, no, I didn't get what you were saying. I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
Anywho, so, you want to go in these situations with an open mind and look at that improvement, that constant to progress daily kind of thing. I would be remiss to say that I'm just God's gift to welding education. I'm not. I fail on multiple occasions. My classroom management is still absolutely terrible. I've got, some systems in place that make my job a little bit easier, but I'm always like trying to figure out how to do something better. My wife, she runs a little podcast, and she's all about helping teachers manage their preps, getting things more efficient, working down. She at one point was teaching 7 different class periods in engineering and robotics and all this sort of stuff, and eventually worked her way to teaching 3. I think she might have been 4, but just mastering the stuff that she wanted to, getting the classes off her plate that were nonsense, and building up her program. And so that's what she does, and she does really good at it too. Anywho, but I'm just trying to figure out a way to always improve myself when I go into situations like that, because I know that I have my shortcomings as an educator. I'm always all over the place, and definitely could be improved upon.
Yeah,
this is a flaw. Yeah,
that's one thing I loved about going to all those different conferences is every time I'd go out, I'd come back a better educator. Whether it was Ryan's class or any of the other classes that they put on at Lincoln Electric for educators. Then I found out about the Instructors Institute, and then I pursued my CWI, and like you start going through all these different things, and you're never going to be perfect. You're never, like you said, you're never going to be God's gift to welding instruction, but you're going to be better every single time. Yeah, and that I did my CWI 10 years ago now, and it was one of those things where I was like, these are little goals that I had for myself to better my classroom situation, because the more knowledge I can obtain and relate it to my students, they're going to be better off. Yep. So my CWI, everyone always asks, well, what do you do with your CWI? I'm like, well, I obviously could do quite a bit. But I did all that studying so that I could better train my students. And it wasn't like, obviously I can't really certify them according to the ATF criteria, blah, 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 but I can run them through the same paces so that they can say, well, I passed it simulation wise with Massic. Now, when I go to do this job test, I can do it again. Yeah, I have that confidence. Yeah. And so, even just all the random welding education, 2-hour test of like 150 general ed. Yeah. 100. Yeah. That thing was, brutal. Anywho, like random stuff that you just like won't leave my brain about like electroslag welding and whatnot. And I'm like, why do I have this stuff? It's like math class back in high school. Yeah. When the hell am I ever going to use this for this question on this test that I'm about to take? Yeah. Did you, where did you do a 1 week seminar when you do? No, I did I did the 2 week in LJ, Georgia at Real Educational. Okay. I did the 2 week. I heard so many positive reviews. Like everybody was talking about it. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, let me give this one a shot. And I went down there, and Gerald and Linda are freaking amazing. And I was lucky enough. Well, I don't want to say lucky enough, because I busted my ass for those 2 weeks. Like I tuned everything else out, shut off all my social media accounts. My wife was the only person I talked to, and that was maybe 7 minutes a day. And I just studied and busted my ass for 2 weeks. And I passed first try. But, it's you get out what you put in. There was other people there. They're like, "Hey, man, let's go to the bar." Let's go party. I'm not doing any of that stuff while I'm here. I've already pre-made all my meals for the week, and I'm studying every night, not going out on the weekends. I went to Hobart, and so in Troy, Ohio, and I did the 2 week there, and I had a hotel with a fridge, and I went to the grocery store the first day, and I just bought all my food. I packed a sack lunch every day. I ate in my hotel room that every evening, and I studied. I read the stupid book over and over and over again, and all the reading assignments they had. Like it was a tough pace, and I have like serious ADHD, and I've contemplated going back on meds several times just to keep me in line. But taking those tests and just trying to like focus was just the most brutal thing ever. But the hard work paid off. Yeah. And so I have my credentials up on my wall, and kids come in and they see all the weld ed stuff. They see all the CWI stuff, and they see my degrees, and they're like, "Oh, you're smart." I'm like, "No, I busted my tail, and I can do hard things." And we're going to talk about how you can do hard things too. Like you're just as smart as my wall of my credentials here. You'll eventually get your own wall of credentials. But some people think I'm gloating, and I'm like, well, I am, because
I had to bust my butt to get that stuff. And I want these kids to realize they can do it too. Like I had learning disabilities. I was in those inclusion classes. I was all sorts of, a hot ADD mess in high school, all over the place. And, I would feel like I wouldn't say made it, but I'm doing a career. I'm having a blast doing it. These kids who are just like me, having a hard time paying attention, can make a career out of something they're passionate about too.
100%, dude.
Yeah.
And, keep doing what you're doing, man. We need more educators like you. And I think when you get down there to Miami, you're going to meet up with like 21 other highly passionate educators. And it's a blast, dude. And the coolest part about that event, yes, you get to learn a ton while you're there. You're going to get to do some welding. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you're going to be able to do that week. But the coolest thing is the networking aspect. Meeting the other instructors. You're going to be a mentor to some of them, and some of them are going to be a mentor to you. But once you leave, you've got 21 new contacts in your phone to reach out and say, hey, have you ever dealt with anything like this? Or, hey, I've got a student. I had a guy reach out to me, Ben. He reached out to me a couple weeks ago. He's like, hey, you remember me? I'm from the Instructors Institute. I was like, yeah, Ben, I know. I've got your number saved in my phone. I know who you are.
Yeah.
He's like, I got a student moving down to Orlando. Do you have any contacts for me? I was like, yeah, sure. Here you go. Boom. We hung up the phone.
Awesome.
I started sending him contacts. I was like, here's some leads. And it's leaning on your networks. I mean, that's probably one of the coolest things that I got when I was there. Last year, I was privileged enough to be invited to the Instructors Institute as a speaker, and that's what I did my entire presentation on, was the networking aspects of the Instructors Institute.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say that the contacts are really where it's at, and I've been really excited again just to go in, make those contacts, help as best I can and learn as best I can, kind of further the welding education in general. It's never, again, I'm not the smart. What is it? I've heard this before. Is it Ryan that said this, or somebody else? If you ever find that you're the smartest man in the room, you need to find a new room.
That's Ryan.
Yeah. Or you guys,
you need to find another room.
And I'm like, I can't, constantly be, and I'm not the smartest guy in any room by any means, but like, I want to find a room that challenges me. And oftentimes I've got to force myself into, being uncomfortable. You get into ruts, right? And, the worst thing you want to do is just get complacent. And it's hard, 14, 15 years into teaching to say, oh, I'm just going to sit here in my office. I'm like, no, you can't teach from your desk. You got to get out there. You got to get in the booths. Ryan comes in your booth and puts his arm around you, just watches as you're doing it. And it's just like, all right, yeah, this is how it should be done, one-on-one, which is challenging, especially if you have a larger class. But you'll make some time, you'll put out the fires, and you'll get in there and you'll make connections. A lot of students, I teach welding, and I wouldn't say there's very many that go into the welding field, right? I've got some kids who've gone into engineering and blah, blah, blah. And they may not remember much of what I taught them, but they're going to remember how they felt, right? They're going to remember the excitement. They're going to remember the good times. And they're just going to say, oh, yeah, you know what? I felt like he cared, kind of thing, versus, I remember what 70-18 means. And I'm if they're an auto mechanic, they don't really need to know what 70-18 means. And I'm not saying that's not important stuff. We want to teach our curriculum. We want to teach that theory. But I think sometimes you can get maybe caught up in, they've got to pass X, Y, and Z off versus, how about making those connections, right?
Yeah. It's about, helping them do hard things.
Yeah.
And that's just going to put them on a path to success for their life, whether they get into welding as a career or not.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I'm, teaching 210 kids. I mean, if all my students wound up in the welding career, we wouldn't have a skills gap, right? Yeah. But I know that that's not where they're going to end up. What I want them to do is end up being, better in their career than their other people. They can compete, and no matter what they're going to do, and that work ethic, they learned it in welding class, right? Or whatever have you. So they can get out there and bust their tail, and they know what it takes.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. So where can people reach out and find you if they want to get your 4-point scale, or, just link up with you as an educator?
So my Instagram for my educator is at MMHS_welding. That's or Maple Mountain High School, but it's MMHS_welding. And that's pretty much where I do most of my dabbling. I have, a personal one for my friends and family, and whatnot, but that's where they'll find me.
Well, awesome, man. I appreciate you taking the time. I hope you have nothing but fun down there at the Instructors Institute next week. Say hi to my buddy Juan. He'll be down there. He's coming in from Orlando. Same thing, man. I've been nominating him for the past 3 years, and we finally got him a seat this year. So he's going down. I've been pumping him up, getting him all excited. He's all nervous and anxious and ready to go. So you guys will have an awesome time down there.
I'm super excited. Thanks a bunch, man.
Yeah. Thanks again for coming out on the show.
You bet.
All right, ladies and gents, thanks so much for downloading this episode. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation between Jared and I. Be sure to tune in every Monday for new episodes and subscribe on your favorite downloader app so you never miss an episode. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.